Thunder crashes across the desolate moors as ELENA stumbles through the rain, her bare feet bleeding on ancient cobblestones. The castle gates hang open like a mouth frozen mid-scream, iron teeth rusted by centuries of storms. She has nowhere else to go. The village cast her out, her family dead, hunger gnawing at her bones like a living thing. From the shadows emerges Lord Draven, pale as moonlight, eyes burning crimson in the darkness. His presence fills the courtyard with power older than kingdoms, deadlier than any mortal threat. Yet when he sees her, broken, desperate, beautiful in her defiance, something shifts in his ancient heart. He kneels before this starving girl, his voice barely a whisper against the storm. I need a bride, and you need shelter. But what happens when a creature who has forgotten how to love meets a woman who refuses to surrender her soul? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. ELENA's trembling hand pushes against the massive oak doors, their weight seeming to yield to her touch as if the castle itself welcomes her inside. The grand hall stretches before her like a cathedral of shadows, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into darkness above. Tapestries hang in tatters along the walls, their once vibrant colors faded to ghostly whispers of forgotten glory. At the hall's center stands an obsidian mirror, taller than any man, its surface rippling like black water despite the absence of any breeze. ELENA approaches cautiously, drawn by an inexplicable pull. When she gazes into its depths, she sees not her own reflection, but flashes of the castle's past. Grand balls where lords and ladies danced beneath crystal chandeliers, feasts where laughter echoed off stone walls. Children running through corridors now thick with dust and silence. The mirror shows what was, what is, and what might be. Draven's voice echoes from the shadows. He has not followed her inside, lingering instead at the threshold, as if some invisible barrier holds him back. It reveals the truth of souls. ELENA turns from the mirror to find herself no longer alone. Figures emerge from the darkness. Servants, she realizes, though they move with an otherworldly grace that speaks of something beyond mortal understanding. They are shadows given form, wisps of smoke that somehow possess hands gentle enough to tend her wounds and eyes that hold echoes of human compassion. One shadow servant, taller than the rest, approaches with a silver basin filled with warm water. Another brings soft cloths and what appears to be healing salve that glows faintly in the dim light. They work in perfect silence, washing the mud and blood from ELENA's feet, tending cuts with a care that brings tears to her eyes. It has been so long since anyone showed her kindness. The shadow servants guide her deeper into the castle, through corridors lined with portraits whose eyes seem to follow her passage. Some faces are kind, others stern, but all carry the weight of centuries. ELENA recognizes nobility in their bearing, beauty in their features, and something else, a sadness that seems to permeate the very stones. They bring her to a dining hall, where a feast awaits on a table that could seat 20. Golden plates hold delicacies she has never seen, fruits that glisten like jewels, bread that smells of honey and herbs, wine that catches the candlelight like liquid rubies. ELENA's stomach clenches with hunger so fierce it nearly brings her to her knees. "Eat," comes Draven's voice from somewhere in the darkness beyond the candlelight. "You are safe here." ELENA sits at the grand table, feeling small and insignificant in the ornate chair. She takes a tentative bite of the bread, expecting it to turn to ash in her mouth, as all good things in her life have done. Instead, it tastes of comfort itself, warm and nourishing in a way that goes beyond mere sustenance. The wine warms her from within, chasing away the chill that has lived in her bones for months. As she eats, ELENA becomes aware of Draven watching from the shadows. She catches glimpses of him in her peripheral vision, the gleam of pale skin, the flash of crimson eyes, the graceful way he moves without making a sound. He never steps fully into the light, never joins her at the table, but his presence fills the room like a storm barely held in check. "Why don't you eat with me?" Elena asks, her voice echoing in the vast space. "I have already eaten," comes his reply, though something in his tone suggests layers of meaning she does not yet understand. The shadow servants continue their silent ministrations, refilling her glass before it empties, bringing new dishes when she finishes others. Elena has never experienced such abundance, such care. After a lifetime of scraping for every morsel, this feels like a dream, beautiful but somehow unreal. When she can eat no more, the servants clear the table with the same ethereal efficiency. One approaches with a silk gown the color of midnight, embroidered with silver threads that seem to capture starlight. Elena touches the fabric in wonder, knowing it is finer than anything she has ever worn. "The east wing has been prepared for you," Draven's voice carries from the darkness. "You will find everything you need. Rest now. Tomorrow we will speak of the arrangement between us." Elena rises from the table, the silk gown draped over her arm, and follows a shadow servant through more corridors to a tower room that takes her breath away. Windows overlook the moors, where lightning still dances across the sky. A fire burns in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on walls hung with rich tapestries. The bed is enormous, draped in velvet curtains and piled high with furs and silks. As Elena prepares for sleep in this room fit for a queen, she cannot shake the feeling that she has stepped into a fairy tale, one where she cannot yet tell if she is the princess or the sacrifice. Elena wakes to sunlight streaming through tall windows, though the light seems muted, as if the castle exists in perpetual twilight. She finds herself dressed in the midnight gown, its silk cool against her skin. On the bedside table sits a breakfast tray, fresh bread, honey and tea that steams invitingly. A soft knock echoes through the chamber. "Enter," Elena calls, expecting one of the shadow servants. Instead, Draven himself steps through the doorway, and Elena sees him clearly for the first time. He is tall and lean, with pale skin that seems to glow with its own inner light. His dark hair falls in waves to his shoulders, framing a face of sharp angles and classical beauty. But it is his eyes that capture her, ancient crimson that holds the weight of centuries, yet flickers with something achingly human. "We must discuss the terms of our arrangement," he says, his voice carrying the formality of someone unaccustomed to casual conversation. He leads her to his study, a circular room in the highest tower. Books line the walls from floor to ceiling, their leather bindings cracked with age. Ancient maps cover a heavy oak desk, showing kingdoms that no longer exist. But Elena's attention fixes on a single object resting beside an ornate inkwell, a quill unlike any she has ever seen. The crimson quill appears to be carved from a single ruby, its surface gleaming with an inner fire. When Draven lifts it, Elena sees that it requires no ink. The tip drips with what looks like liquid starlight mixed with blood. "This quill writes contracts that cannot be broken," Draven explains, his fingers handling it with reverent care. What it inscribes becomes law, binding beyond death itself. Elena steps closer, drawn despite her caution. "What kind of contract?" "A marriage contract, though not of the sort you might expect." Draven's gaze meets hers, and she sees vulnerability beneath his formality. "This castle is dying, Elena. For 3 centuries, it has been without a lady to guide it. The servants fade more each day. The walls crumble. The very essence that gives this place life grows weaker with each passing year." He moves to the window, gazing out at the moors. "I'm bound to this place by ancient magic. I cannot leave, cannot die, cannot live. But with a bride, with someone to share the burden of eternity, the castle can be restored to what it once was." "And what would I gain from this arrangement?" Elena asks, though she suspects she already knows. "Safety, comfort, a place to belong." His voice softens. "You spoke of having nowhere to go. Here, you would want for nothing. The castle would protect you, provide for you, give you purpose." Elena walks to the desk, studying the contract already written in flowing script. The crimson quill has inscribed terms in a language she doesn't recognize, yet somehow understands. "She will become lady of the castle, bound to Draven and the ancient magic that sustains this place. In return, she will have security, luxury, and a home that will endure beyond mortal years. What of love? She asks quietly. Draven's expression grows distant. Love is not required for the magic to work. Companionship, loyalty, and shared purpose are sufficient. I do not expect you to feel more than duty toward me. There is something in his tone that suggests he has given up hope of more, that centuries of solitude have convinced him love is beyond his reach. ELENA finds this sadder than any curse. What if I refuse? Then you are free to leave. I will provide you with supplies, gold enough to start again wherever you choose. I ask nothing from you that is not freely given. ELENA lifts the crimson quill, feeling its weight in her hand. The moment her fingers touch it, images flash through her mind. The castle in its glory days, filled with laughter and light. Draven as he once was, younger looking but with the same ancient eyes, and herself, wearing a crown of silver and standing beside him as equals. If I sign this, what becomes of me? You become something more than human, yet retain your mortality unless you choose otherwise. The castle's magic will slow your aging, strengthen your body, sharpen your mind. You will live longer than ordinary people, but you will not become what I am unless that is your desire. ELENA dips the quill in the starlight ink, watching it swirl with hypnotic beauty. And if I change my mind later? The contract binds us for 7 years. At the end of that time, you may choose to renew it or leave with my blessing and enough wealth to live comfortably for the remainder of your natural life. 7 years. It seems both an eternity and no time at all. ELENA thinks of the cold village that cast her out, the empty roads with nowhere to lead, the constant hunger and fear that have been her companions for so long. She signs her name with steady strokes, and the quill seems to sing as it touches the parchment. The moment she finishes, the contract glows with brilliant light before settling into ordinary ink on ordinary paper. It is done, Draven says, and ELENA hears relief in his voice. Welcome to Raven's Hollow Castle, my lady. The east wing of Raven's Hollow Castle becomes ELENA's domain, though she quickly discovers she is not its first mistress. Her chambers connect to a series of rooms that tell stories of women who came before, bedchambers with personal belongings still scattered on vanity tables, sitting rooms where embroidery lies half-finished in work baskets, libraries filled with journals written in feminine hands. ELENA wanders through these spaces like a ghost among ghosts, touching silk scarves that still hold traces of forgotten perfumes, running her fingers over piano keys that haven't been played in decades. Each room whispers of a life interrupted, a story left unfinished. In what appears to have been a music room, ELENA discovers portraits lining the walls, women in gowns spanning centuries of fashion. Their faces are beautiful but haunted, each bearing a resemblance to ELENA that makes her skin crawl. Dark hair, pale skin, eyes that hold both strength and sorrow. They could be sisters, these women, or different versions of the same person painted across time. At the room's center stands a glass display case containing a delicate silver locket. Unlike everything else in these chambers, the locket shows no signs of age or neglect. It gleams as if freshly polished, its surface engraved with intricate roses that seem to shift and bloom when ELENA isn't looking directly at them. She lifts the case's lid, her hands trembling slightly. The moment her fingers touch the locket, the room fills with the sound of weeping, not threatening but infinitely sad, as if the very walls remember every tear shed within them. The locket opens at her touch, revealing a miniature portrait that steals her breath. The woman depicted looks exactly like ELENA, down to the shape of her eyes and the curve of her lips. But this woman wears the expression of pure joy, her painted smile radiant with love and hope. Her name was Isabel. ELENA spins to find Draven standing in the doorway, his face carefully composed, but his eyes betraying deep pain. She was the first, he continues, stepping into the room with the careful movements of someone navigating through memories. In 1692, when the curse was new, and I still believed love could conquer it. What happened to her? Draven approaches the display case, gazing down at the locket with infinite tenderness. She tried to save me. The curse that binds me to this castle requires a willing sacrifice to break it. Someone must choose to give their life freely, out of pure love, with no coercion or manipulation. Isabel believed she could be that sacrifice. Elena's heart clenches. But it didn't work. Love requires time to grow, and time was what we didn't have. She made the choice too quickly, driven by pity rather than true affection. The magic rejected her sacrifice, and he pauses, his jaw tightening. She simply faded away, like morning mist touched by sunlight. Elena studies the other portraits with new understanding. Were they all trying to break your curse? Some. Others merely lived here until age or illness claimed them. A few chose to leave when they realized what manner of creature I truly am. His voice carries no bitterness, only resignation. Each woman who has worn that locket believed she could save me. Each learned that salvation cannot be forced. How many have there been? 13, counting yourself. The magic of this place seems to call to women of a certain nature. Strong-willed, compassionate, beautiful, in a way that transcends mere physical appearance. He looks at Elena directly, each one a variation on the same theme, as if fate enjoys repeating itself with minor modifications. Elena closes the locket carefully, feeling the weight of history in her hands. Do you expect me to try to break your curse as well? I expect nothing beyond what we agreed upon. Companionship, shared responsibility for the castle's welfare, and mutual respect. If you choose to attempt something more, that decision must be entirely your own. But Elena hears what he doesn't say, that he has given up hope. The 3 centuries of failed attempts have convinced him the curse is unbreakable. The thought fills her with unexpected sadness. Tell me about the curse. How did it begin? Draven's expression grows distant. I was not always what I am now. Once I was merely a man, vain, selfish, convinced of my own importance. I rejected the love of a powerful sorceress, mocked her feelings publicly, humiliated her before my court. He pauses, shame flickering across his features. Her curse was elegant in its cruelty. I would live forever, but only by taking the life force of others. I would hunger for love, but be incapable of inspiring it. And I would be bound to this castle, unable to leave, until someone loved me enough to die for me willingly. Elena fastens the locket around her neck, feeling its weight settle against her heart like a promise. Perhaps the previous women failed because they were trying to save you instead of simply loving you. Perhaps, Draven says, but his tone suggests he places little faith in such distinctions. As Elena explores the rest of her new domain, she carries with her the knowledge that she walks in the footsteps of 13 other women, each of whom believed they could change an immortal being's fate. The locket pulses gently against her skin, warm with memories of love, both found and lost. 3 days pass in careful routine. Elena explores the castle during daylight hours, while Draven remains absent, appearing only after sunset for brief formal conversations about household matters. She begins to understand that he is avoiding her deliberately, maintaining distance between them, like a man walking the edge of a precipice. On the 4th night, Elena discovers why. She wakes to the sound of breaking glass echoing through the castle corridors. Following the sound, she finds Draven in what was once a grand ballroom, standing amid the shattered remains of an ornate mirror. His hands are clenched into fists, his entire body rigid with barely controlled tension. In the moonlight, streaming through tall windows, his pale skin seems to glow with an inner fire. "You should not be here," he says without turning around, his voice rough with strain. "What's wrong?" Elena steps carefully around the broken glass, noting how his hands tremble despite his apparent stillness. "The hunger." The words come out as a growl. "It grows stronger each day you remain here. Your presence awakens something in me that has slept for decades." Elena stops several feet away, suddenly understanding the careful distance he maintains. "When did you last feed?" "Feed," he laughs bitterly. Such a simple word for such a monstrous act. 3 weeks ago, I traveled to the nearest city, found a man who would not be missed, a criminal, someone whose absence would improve the world. I told myself it was mercy, both for him and for others he might harm. But it wasn't enough. It is never enough. The curse ensures that satisfaction remains always just beyond reach. He finally turns to face her, and ELENA sees the crimson fire burning in his eyes, brighter and more dangerous than ever before. Your blood calls to me, ELENA. The magic that binds us as husband and wife makes your life force sing in my veins like the finest wine. I hunger for you specifically, and that hunger grows more demanding each day. ELENA should be terrified. Any rational person would flee from a creature confessing his desire to drain her life. Instead, she finds herself stepping closer, drawn by the pain in his voice rather than repelled by his words. There must be another way. Some alternative that doesn't require death. I have searched for 3 centuries. There is no alternative. But ELENA remembers something from her exploration of the castle's library, an ancient text written in a language that seemed to shift and change as she read it. She had found it in a section devoted to magical artifacts, though at the time she hadn't understood its significance. "Wait here," she tells Draven, then hurries to the library. The book sits exactly where she left it, bound in leather so old it feels like parchment under her fingers. She carries it back to the ballroom, where Draven has not moved from his position among the broken glass. "Look at this," she says, opening the book to a page that shows the illustration of a silver goblet. The text below it writhes and shifts until it resolves into words she can read. "The chalice of eternal sustenance grants nourishment without death, life without destruction." Draven stares at the page with growing amazement. "I know this book. I've read it countless times, but never has it shown me this passage. Perhaps it only reveals what you're ready to see," ELENA suggests. "Where is this chalice?" According to the text, the goblet rests in the castle's deepest vault, hidden behind wards that respond only to one who seeks alternatives to violence. ELENA and Draven descend through levels of the castle she didn't know existed, past chambers carved from living rock, through corridors where the very air thrums with ancient magic. The vault door stands open at their approach, recognizing ELENA's pure intentions. Inside, the silver goblet sits on a simple stone pedestal, its surface reflecting light that doesn't exist. When ELENA lifts it, the chalice feels warm in her hands, almost alive. "Drink," she tells Draven, offering him the goblet. He hesitates. "If this fails, if the hunger overwhelms me while you stand so close, it won't fail." ELENA's voice carries absolute conviction. Though she cannot say why she feels so certain. Draven takes the chalice, their fingers brushing briefly. The moment he drinks from it, his entire body relaxes as visible tension drains away. The crimson fire in his eyes gentles to warm embers, and his face loses the sharp angles of barely controlled predation. "How do you feel?" ELENA asks. "Satisfied," he says wonderingly. "For the first time in 3 centuries, truly satisfied. The hunger is quiet." ELENA finds herself smiling. Perhaps salvation doesn't require death after all. Perhaps it simply requires someone willing to look for a better way. Draven studies her face in the vault's magical light, and ELENA sees something new in his expression. Not just gratitude, but the first stirring of genuine hope he has allowed himself in decades. The discovery of the silver goblet changes the dynamic between ELENA and Draven. He no longer avoids her during evening hours, though their conversations remain careful, formal. ELENA senses walls around his heart, built by centuries of disappointment. But she also notices small cracks beginning to form. During her daily explorations, ELENA discovers a tower room she hasn't seen before. Unlike the rest of the castle, this chamber feels alive with recent activity. A writing desk sits by the window, its surface covered with papers, inkwells, and quills of various sizes. But it is the largest quill that catches her attention, a magnificent feather that seems to burn with inner fire, its surface shifting between gold and crimson like a living flame. When ELENA touches the phoenix feather quill, the room fills with whispered voices, women's voices, speaking words she cannot quite understand but somehow feels in her heart. The papers on the desk rustle without any wind, and she realizes these are letters, dozens of them, written in feminine hands across different time periods. She picks up the nearest letter, written in faded brown ink that might once have been read. "My dearest sister, if anyone finds this letter, know that I came here willingly. Lord Draven is not the monster the stories claim, but a man trapped by circumstances beyond his control. I believe I can save him, though the cost may be higher than I first understood. If I fail, perhaps another will succeed where I could not." The letter is signed Isabel, and dated 1692. ELENA reads another, written in more recent script, "To whoever comes after me, beware the mirror in the east wing." It shows not just truth, but desire, and desire can be more dangerous than any lie. "I thought I understood love, but love without wisdom is merely passion, and passion burns out too quickly to sustain the magic required." This one is signed Catherine, 1889. Each letter tells a similar story. Women who came to the castle believing they could break Draven's curse through love or sacrifice, each discovering that the reality was far more complex than they had imagined. Some letters speak of genuine affection growing between writer and lord, others of fear and regret. But all carry the same underlying message: breaking the curse requires more than good intentions. ELENA picks up the phoenix feather quill, marveling at its warmth. The moment the quill touches paper, words begin flowing from it, as if it possesses a will of its own. "To the woman who will come after me, for I know now that I will not be the last." The curse that binds Lord Draven is not one of simple love or sacrifice. It is a curse of understanding. He must learn to value love over possession, sacrifice over selfishness. But the woman who breaks his curse must also learn something, that saving someone and loving someone are not the same thing. ELENA stops writing, startled by the wisdom flowing through the quill. She hadn't intended to write those words, yet they feel absolutely true. She continues, letting the phoenix quill guide her thoughts. "I have been here only days, but already I see what the others missed. They came here thinking they could change him through their love. But true love doesn't seek to change the beloved, it seeks to understand them. Draven has spent 3 centuries learning to hate what he is. Perhaps what he needs is not someone to transform him, but someone to accept him." The quill grows warmer in her hand, and ELENA realizes she is writing not just to some future woman, but to herself, crystallizing thoughts she hadn't fully formed. The goblet was the first lesson, that there are always alternatives to destruction if one is willing to look for them. But I suspect there will be more lessons, more tests of whether I truly understand what love means. The other women failed, not because they lacked courage or compassion, but because they tried to save Draven instead of simply being with him. ELENA sets down the quill, her hand trembling slightly. Through the window, she sees Draven walking in the castle gardens, his movements graceful, even in solitude. For the first time, she studies him not as a puzzle to solve or a curse to break, but simply as a man, lonely, burdened, but possessing a quiet dignity that draws her more than any supernatural allure. That evening, when Draven joins her for dinner, ELENA makes a decision. Instead of asking about his past or the curse, she tells him about her own life, the village that rejected her after her parents died, the months of wandering and hunger, the simple dreams she once harbored of finding a place to belong. "I used to imagine having a garden," she says, cutting delicate bites of the roasted vegetables the shadow servants have prepared. "Not for survival, but for beauty. Roses and jasmine, herbs that smell like summer, vegetables that grow because someone tends them with care rather than desperation." Draven listens with an attention that makes ELENA feel truly heard for the first time in years. When she finishes speaking, he says quietly, "The castle has extensive gardens, though they have been neglected since—" He pauses. "Since I stopped believing anyone would care enough to tend them properly. Would you show them to me tomorrow?" Something shifts in Draven's expression, surprise then a cautious hope. "If you wish." As ELENA prepares for sleep that night, she finds herself thinking not about curses or magic, but about the simple pleasure of planning a garden with someone who might understand why such things matter. ELENA finds Magnus in the castle's lower chambers, polishing silver that gleams despite centuries of age. He moves with the fluid grace of the other shadow servants, but there is something more substantial about him, more present. When he speaks, his voice carries the weight of memory rather than the whispered echoes of the others. "My lady," he says, bowing formally. "How may I serve you?" "I want to understand," ELENA says simply. "About the castle, about Lord Draven's curse, about what happened to the women who came before me." Magnus sets down his polishing cloth, studying ELENA with eyes that seem far older than his youthful face should allow. "Understanding can be dangerous, my lady. Some truths are harder to bear than ignorance. I'll take that risk." Magnus nods slowly, then leads her to a small chamber she hasn't seen before. In its center stands a single white candle as tall as ELENA's forearm, its flame burning with unwavering brightness despite the absence of any visible wick. The candle's wax is pure white, but as ELENA watches, tears of wax drip down its sides, tears that shimmer with images like tiny windows into the past. "The weeping candle," Magnus explains, his voice reverent. "It burns with the memories of all who have lived within these walls. The wax holds their joys and sorrows, their hopes and fears. It has burned for 3 centuries without diminishing." ELENA approaches the candle, drawn by its mysterious light. In the pooled wax at its base, she sees images forming and dissolving, scenes from the castle's history playing out in miniature. "Tell me about Draven," she says, settling into a chair beside the candle. "Not the curse, not the monster. Tell me about the man." Magnus is quiet for a long moment, watching the candle's flame dance. "He was different before the curse. Proud, yes, but not cruel. Generous to his people, though perhaps too aware of his own nobility. He believed the world owed him admiration simply for existing." In the wax, ELENA sees a younger Draven holding court, his face bright with laughter as courtiers vie for his attention. He's beautiful in his arrogance, commanding in his certainty that he deserves whatever he desires. The sorceress who cursed him, Morgana, she truly loved him. Magnus continues. Not the shallow affection of his usual admirers, but deep, genuine feeling. She saw past his vanity to the man he could become, if humbled by experience. The wax shows a woman of ethereal beauty approaching Draven at a ball, her dark hair crowned with silver stars, her gown flowing like liquid. Night. ELENA watches as Morgana offers her heart openly, honestly, and sees Draven's cruel rejection, his public mockery that reduces a powerful sorceress to tears before his entire court. He hurt her deeply, ELENA observes, more than he understood at the time. Morgana's curse was not born of spite, but of sorrow. She wanted him to learn what love truly costs, what it means to hunger for something that cannot be taken or commanded. ELENA sees the moment of the curse in the pooled wax, Morgana standing before Draven's throne, tears streaming down her face as she speaks words that remake reality around them. Draven's transformation is not instantaneous but gradual, his humanity slowly stripped away until only hunger remains. He tried to break the curse immediately, Magnus says. Searched for Morgana, attempted to apologize, to make amends. But she had vanished, and the damage was done. What happened to the other women who tried to save him? The truth, Magnus, the servant's expression grows pained. The curse is more complex than mere love or sacrifice. It requires understanding, both from Lord Draven and from the woman who would break it. The first 12, he pauses, watching scenes play out in the wax. They failed because they tried to save him without first understanding what he needed to learn. ELENA sees flashes of the previous women. Isabel choosing sacrifice too quickly, driven by pity rather than love. Catherine attempting to change Draven through force of will. Others trying various approaches, all missing some crucial element. What must he learn? ELENA asks. That love is not possession. That worth cannot be commanded or demanded, only earned. That true strength lies not in taking what you desire, but in becoming worthy of it, being freely given. And what must the woman learn? Magnus meets her eyes directly. That saving someone and loving them are different things. That you cannot heal another's wounds by sacrificing yourself upon them. That the only love powerful enough to break such a curse is one that sees clearly and chooses freely. Without illusion or martyrdom, in the candle's flame, ELENA sees an image that makes her breath catch. Herself and Draven standing together in sunlight, both transformed but still recognizably themselves. Surrounded by a garden in full bloom. Is that the future? She whispers. It is a possibility, Magnus says carefully. One path among many. Whether it becomes reality depends on choices not yet made, lessons not yet learned. ELENA watches the image fade, replaced by swirling wax that holds no clear pictures. Why are you telling me this, Magnus? The others, did you warn them too? I tried. But they saw only what they wished to see, heard only what confirmed their preconceptions. You are the first to ask the right questions, my lady. The first to seek understanding, rather than simply seeking to act. ELENA studies the faithful servant who has watched 13 women attempt to break his master's curse. There's something else, isn't there? Something you haven't told me? Magnus hesitates, then nods slowly. The curse has a time limit, my lady. If it is not broken by the next blood moon, which falls in 6 months' time, it becomes permanent. Lord Draven will lose the last vestiges of his humanity, and no love, however pure, will be able to reach him. The weight of this revelation settles over ELENA like a shroud. 6 months to accomplish what 12 other women could not achieve in centuries. Does he know? She asks. He suspects. The hunger grows stronger as the deadline approaches, the beast within him harder to contain. It is why he was so reluctant to accept another bride, why he tried to warn you away. ELENA stands, decision crystallizing in her mind. Then we have no time to waste on fear or hesitation. The castle's gardens stretch beyond. ELENA's wildest imagination, acres of overgrown beauty where nature has begun reclaiming what was once perfectly manicured. Rosebushes tangle with ivy, their blooms sparse but determined. Fruit trees heavy with unpicked apples and pears create natural arbors where peacocks once strutted. Stone pathways disappear beneath carpets of fallen leaves and wildflowers that have seeded themselves wherever they please. Draven walks beside ELENA through this controlled wilderness, his steps careful and quiet. She notices how he avoids touching the plants, as if he believes his very presence might corrupt their natural beauty. It was Martha's domain, he says, gesturing toward a greenhouse whose glass panels catch the afternoon light. My grandmother's head gardener. She spent 40 years creating something extraordinary here, then died of fever the winter before. He pauses. Before the curse, ELENA kneels beside a struggling rosebush, its stems blackened but showing new green growth at the base. The plants aren't dying. They're just waiting. Waiting for what? For someone to believe in them again. She begins clearing dead growth from around the rose, her hands gentle but efficient. Draven watches with fascination as she works, seeing something he has forgotten, that destruction can be an act of love when done to encourage new life. May I? ELENA asks, indicating a pair of pruning shears hanging from a nearby trellis. Draven retrieves them for her, his fingers brushing hers as he places the tools in her hands. The brief contact sends warmth through both of them, and ELENA notices that where Draven's hands touched the metal, frost forms, despite the warm afternoon air. She begins pruning the rosebush with careful precision, cutting away dead wood to reveal the healthy growth beneath. As she works, she explains her reasoning, which cuts will encourage new blooms, how the plant's energy can be redirected toward growth, rather than maintaining damaged branches. You speak as if the plants have intentions, Draven observes, don't they? Every living thing wants to thrive, to fulfill its purpose. Sometimes it just needs help remembering what that purpose is. ELENA moves to another plant, then another, bringing order to small sections of the vast garden. Draven follows, asking questions that reveal genuine curiosity. When did she learn such things? How does she know which branches to cut and which to preserve? My mother taught me, ELENA says, carefully shaping a climbing vine that has overgrown its support. She said gardens were like people. They need both nurturing and boundaries to become their best selves. They work together as the afternoon progresses, ELENA guiding and Draven following her lead. She notices that his touch, initially deadly to the plants, gradually becomes neutral, then helpful. The frost disappears from his fingertips, replaced by something that makes the plants seem to lean toward him rather than away. Near the garden's heart, they discover something extraordinary, a single rosebush that defies the neglect surrounding it. Its blooms are perfect, crimson petals unfurled in magnificent display, and its stems bear no thorns whatsoever. The plant seems to glow with inner light, each flower more beautiful than seems possible in nature. I've never seen anything like it, ELENA breathes. Approaching the bush with reverence, it appeared the day after Isabel died, Draven says quietly. I thought it was coincidence at first, but when Catherine passed, it bloomed again, more vibrantly than before. It has done the same after each woman's departure. ELENA reaches toward one of the perfect blooms, then stops. What happens if I touch it? I don't know. I've never had the courage to find out. ELENA studies the thornless rose, understanding instinctively that this is no ordinary plant. It pulses with magic, with memory, with something that speaks to the deepest parts of her heart. She can feel its pull, like a song just beyond hearing. It's beautiful, she whispers. Beautiful and terrible, Draven agrees. Like love itself. ELENA extends her hands slowly, her fingertips barely brushing one perfect petal. The moment she makes contact, the entire garden transforms around them. Dead plants surge to life, flowers bloom in impossible profusion, and the air fills with the perfume of 1,000 roses. The magic spreading outward from the thornless bush restores everything it touches to perfect health and beauty. But more than that, ELENA feels something change within herself, a warmth that has nothing to do with sunshine, a certainty that settles into her bones like truth finally recognized. When the transformation completes, they stand in a garden restored to its former glory, surrounded by beauty that seems to sparkle with starlight even in broad daylight. The thornless rose continues to glow at the garden's heart, but now its light is gentler, welcoming rather than mysterious. How did you do that? Draven asks, wonder clear in his voice. I didn't do anything. ELENA struggles to find words for what she felt. I just loved it. The garden, the rose, the possibility of what it could become. She looks at Draven directly. The way I'm beginning to love you. Draven goes very still, his eyes widening with something between hope and terror. ELENA, I know it's too soon. I know it's complicated. I know there are a dozen reasons why this is dangerous. ELENA steps closer to him, her hand still tingling from touching the thornless rose. But feelings don't follow logic, do they? They grow like gardens, wild and beautiful and impossible to completely control. For a moment, ELENA thinks Draven might flee, might retreat behind the walls of formality and distance he has maintained for so long. Instead, he reaches up and touches her face with infinite gentleness, his thumb tracing the line of her cheek. You are either very brave or very foolish, he says softly, perhaps both. And there, in a garden restored by magic and watered by the first honest declaration of love either has offered, Draven kisses ELENA beneath the light of an impossible rose that blooms without thorns. Eternal and perfect and true, the peace ELENA has found in Draven's arms shatters like glass against stone when the thundering of horses echoes across the moors. From the castle's highest tower, she watches a column of armed riders approach under banners that make her blood run cold. the silver cross and sword of the Hunter's Brotherhood. And beside it, a standard she knows all too well. "No," she whispers, recognizing the blue and gold colors of her brother's house. Draven appears beside her, his face grim as he surveys the approaching force. 20 men, well armed and blessed. They carry silver weapons and holy water. His voice carries resignation rather than fear. "They've come for you." At the head of the column rides Captain Mordecai, his weathered face set in lines of righteous determination. The Hunter's Brotherhood has pursued creatures of darkness for centuries, their blessed silver weapons capable of ending even immortal lives. But it is the young man riding beside Mordecai who breaks Elena's heart, James, her brother. Barely 21 and convinced he's come to rescue her from a monster. The riders halt in the castle's courtyard, their horses snorting and stamping with unease. Captain Mordecai dismounts with the fluid grace of a veteran warrior, his hand resting on the pommel of a silver sword that gleams with more than reflected light. The weapon pulses with holy magic, its blessed steel capable of cutting through supernatural defenses like parchment. "Lord Draven," Mordecai calls, his voice carrying across the courtyard with military authority. "By order of the church and the crown, release the girl you have taken. We know she is here against her will." James steps forward, his young face twisted with anguish. "Elena, if you can hear me, we've come to take you home." Elena's heart breaks at the pain in her brother's voice. He truly believes he's saving her, just as she once believed the village's rejection was protection rather than cruelty. "I must go to them," Elena tells Draven. "If I don't, they'll storm the castle. People will die, including me," Draven says quietly. "That sword Mordecai carries, it's the blessed silver blade, forged by warrior monks and consecrated with the blood of saints. One cut from it would end my existence permanently." Elena studies the weapon with new understanding. Unlike ordinary silver, which merely burns supernatural creatures, the blessed blade carries the power of absolute destruction. It was created specifically to end immortal lives, to cut through the magic that sustains beings like Draven. "Then we find another way," Elena says firmly. "I won't let them hurt you," but even as she speaks, she knows the futility of her words. 20 armed men against one vampire and a mortal woman. The odds are impossibly against them. Draven takes her hands, his touch gentle despite the tension radiating through his body. "Go to them, Elena. Tell them you came here willingly, that you are safe and well treated. Perhaps they will listen to reason, and if they don't, then I will fight to protect you, knowing that I cannot win." Elena's throat tightens with unshed tears. After everything they've discovered, everything they've begun to build together, it seems impossibly cruel that it should end this way. She descends to the courtyard alone, knowing that Draven's presence would only inflame the situation. The hunters watch her approach with mixed expressions, relief, suspicion, and in James's case, pure joy that wars with confusion. "Elena." James rushes forward, catching her in a fierce embrace. "Thank God you're alive. When we found the village destroyed, when the survivors said you'd been taken by the vampire lord," he pulls back to study her face. "You look well. Has he hurt you?" "No," Elena says honestly. "He has never hurt me." Captain Mordecai approaches with measured steps, his experienced eyes cataloguing details: Elena's fine clothes, her healthy appearance, the way she carries herself with new confidence. "You speak as if you'd defend the creature, girl. Has it bewitched you? His name is Draven, and he is not a creature. He is a man laboring under a curse he did not choose." The captain's expression hardens. "Vampires are cunning deceivers. Whatever it has told you, whatever promises it has made, they are lies designed to make you compliant." "I signed a marriage contract of my own free will," Elena says, producing the document from her bodice. "I am here by choice, Captain Mordecai." James stares at the contract in horror. "Marriage? Elena, you can't possibly mean to stay with that monster." "He is not a monster." Elena's voice carries absolute conviction. "He is a man who has suffered for centuries because someone once taught him that love could be taken by force. I am teaching him that it can only be given freely. Pretty words, Mordecai says, but vampires cannot love. They can only hunger, only consume. Whatever you think you feel for it, whatever you believe it feels for you, is merely the predator's way of keeping its prey close. ELENA sees the absolute certainty in the captain's eyes, the faith that drives men to dedicate their lives to hunting creatures they believe are irredeemably evil. There will be no reasoning with him, no appeal to mercy or understanding. "Stand aside, girl," Mordecai commands, drawing the blessed silver blade. Its surface burns with holy light that makes the very air shimmer. "We end this abomination tonight." "No." ELENA steps between the hunters and the castle entrance, spreading her arms wide. "You'll have to go through me first." James stares at her in disbelief. "ELENA, please, come home with us. Whatever hold this creature has over you, we can break it. The only hold he has over me is love," ELENA says softly, "and I will not let you destroy that." As the hunters advance with grim purpose, ELENA realizes that all the magic and wisdom in the world cannot protect what matters most from those who refuse to see beyond their own certainty. The standoff in the courtyard stretches taut as a bowstring. 20 armed men facing one woman whose only weapon is her unwavering determination. Captain Mordecai's blessed blade hums with holy power, its light casting sharp shadows that seem to cut the very air. "Last warning, girl," Mordecai says, his voice heavy with reluctant respect for ELENA's courage. "Step aside, or be branded an accomplice to evil." ELENA feels her heart hammering against her ribs, but her feet remain planted firmly on the castle's threshold. Behind her she senses Draven's presence, though he has not yet appeared. She knows he wrestles with the choice between protecting her and revealing himself to certain destruction. "ELENA, please," James pleads, his young voice cracking with emotion. "He's poisoned your mind somehow." "The sister I knew would never defend a monster. The sister you knew was broken," ELENA replies, her voice carrying across the courtyard with unexpected strength. "Hungry, desperate, cast out by people who should have protected her. He gave me shelter when my own village would not. He offered me dignity when my own family had written me off as lost." James flinches as if struck. "We searched for you. We never stopped looking. You searched for a year, then held a funeral. I know because I was there, hidden in the woods, watching you bury an empty coffin while I still lived and breathed and needed you." The words hit James like physical blows, and ELENA sees the exact moment he realizes the truth, that they had given up on her, that their rescue mission is born more from guilt than love. Captain Mordecai senses the emotional dynamics weakening his position and raises his blade higher. "Enough of this sentiment. Evil corrupts even the purest hearts when given time to work. Stand down or face the consequences of harboring darkness." That's when Draven finally emerges from the castle, his appearance causing an immediate ripple of tension through the hunters' ranks. But instead of the monster they expected, he moves with careful, deliberate calm, his hands visible and empty of weapons. "Captain Mordecai," Draven says, his voice carrying the authority of centuries. "I know your reputation. You are a man of honor, even if we disagree about the nature of evil. Spare me your honeyed words, creature. I've heard them all before." Then hear something new. Draven steps beside ELENA, not in front of her, not behind her, but as an equal partner. "The woman you seek to protect chose to stay of her own free will. She signed a contract that binds her to this place for 7 years, with the option to leave at any time if she changes her mind." Mordecai's eyes narrow. "Contracts signed under duress have no meaning." "Then test it," Draven says simply. "Ask her to leave with you right now. If she is truly under my influence, she will be unable to refuse." ELENA understands what Draven is doing, offering her a chance to escape, to choose safety over the unknown dangers that lie ahead. The gesture reveals everything about the man he has become, willing to sacrifice his own happiness to ensure hers is freely chosen. "Go," Draven says quietly, his eyes meeting hers. "If you wish it, I will not stop you. I will not even ask you to stay." ELENA feels tears sliding down her cheeks, but not from sadness. These are tears of recognition, of understanding finally made complete. This is what love looks like. Not possession, not manipulation, but the courage to offer freedom, even when it might mean losing everything. She wipes her eyes with the back of her hand, then looks directly at Captain Mordecai. "I choose to stay." "Girl, you don't understand what you're choosing," Mordecai insists. "I understand perfectly." ELENA's voice grows stronger with each word. "I'm choosing a man who gave me dignity when the world offered only pity. I'm choosing someone who asks for my companionship rather than demanding my submission. I'm choosing love over fear, hope over certainty." She turns to James, her heart breaking for the pain in his young face. "I'm choosing a life where I'm valued for who I am, not saved from what I might become." But even as ELENA speaks, she sees something unexpected happening. Tears are falling from her eyes, and where they touch the ground, small flowers begin to bloom, not ordinary flowers, but luminous blossoms that glow with the same inner light as the thornless rose in the garden. Captain Mordecai stares at the miracle occurring at ELENA's feet, his blessed blade wavering in his grip. "What sorcery is this?" "Not sorcery," Magnus says, appearing as if from nowhere among the hunters. Several of them start, hands moving to weapons, but the elderly servant shows no threat. "Healing tears. They are granted only to those whose love is pure enough to restore what has been broken." ELENA looks down in wonder at the flowers blooming around her feet, each one perfect and radiant. She touches her cheek and finds her tears have changed, no longer the salt water of ordinary sorrow, but something that shimmers with supernatural light. "The curse," Draven breathes, understanding dawning in his eyes. "It's beginning to break." Captain Mordecai lowers his blade slightly, his certainty shaken by this unexpected development. "Impossible. Vampires cannot inspire such miracles." "Perhaps," Magnus says gently, "the question is not whether vampires can change, but whether humans can recognize change when it occurs." ELENA takes Draven's hand, feeling the warmth that flows between them, seeing how her tears have begun healing wounds in his soul that have festered for 3 centuries. Around them, the miraculous flowers continue to bloom, proof that love can indeed work wonders when it is freely given and gratefully received. But even as hope blossoms in ELENA's heart, she sees that Captain Mordecai's faith in his mission remains unshaken, his blessed blade still thirsting for vampire blood, despite the miracles occurring before his eyes, the miraculous flowers blooming at ELENA's feet wither and die in an instant as darkness sweeps across the courtyard like a living thing. The temperature plummets, frost forming on stone despite the warm evening air. Captain Mordecai's blessed blade flickers and dims as if struggling against some overwhelming force from the shadows between the castles. Towers emerges a figure that makes even the seasoned vampire hunters step back in alarm. Lady Seraphina materializes from darkness itself, her beauty terrible and perfect as polished obsidian. She wears a gown that seems cut from midnight sky, stars trapped in its fabric like diamonds, and upon her head rests a crown that appears to be carved from pure shadow. "How touching," Seraphina says, her voice carrying the chill of winter storms. "A mortal child believes her tears can break what I have woven across centuries." Draven moves protectively in front of ELENA, his entire body tensing with recognition and dread. "Seraphina, you have no claim here. No claim!" The vampire queen laughs, and the sound makes frost spread further across the courtyard stones. "I am your rightful bride, Draven, promised to you before that foolish sorceress cursed you with her petty jealousy. This mortal is nothing but a temporary distraction." ELENA studies the shadow crown upon Seraphina's brow, understanding instinctively that this is no mere ornament. The crown pulses with malevolent power, its darkness seeming to drink in light itself. Tendrils of shadow extend from it like living things, reaching toward every person in the courtyard with hungry intent. The shadow crown, Magnus whispers, his face pale with fear. She has claimed the ancient artifact of the vampire lords. With it, she can command all creatures of darkness. Captain Mordecai raises his blessed blade, but the holy light, that once burned so brightly now, struggles against the crown's overwhelming darkness. Abomination, he growls, though ELENA hears uncertainty in his voice for the first time. Brave little hunter, Seraphina purrs, gesturing negligently toward Mordecai. Shadow tendrils lash out from her crown, wrapping around the captain's sword arm. Where they touch, his flesh begins to blacken and crack. Your holy trinkets have no power against the true darkness. Release him, Draven commands, stepping forward despite the obvious danger. I think not. But I will make you a bargain, my dear Draven. Seraphina's eyes fix on ELENA with predatory hunger. Give me the mortal child, and I will spare your precious hunters. Refuse, and I will drain them all while you watch, saving the girl for last so she can see what defying me costs. ELENA sees the impossible choice Seraphina has crafted. Draven cannot save both her and the hunters, cannot protect everyone he cares about from this ancient evil. The shadow crown pulses with increasing power, and more tendrils begin reaching toward James and the other men. There's another option, ELENA says, stepping out from behind Draven despite his attempt to shield her. Seraphina's perfect features twist with amusement. Oh, and what might that be, little mortal? Trial by combat. Ancient laws older than your crown. I challenge you for the right to remain at Draven's side. The vampire queen's laughter fills the courtyard like breaking glass. You, a mortal child barely out of adolescence, challenging one who has walked in darkness for 1,000 years? I am Lady ELENA of Raven's Hollow Castle, bound by marriage contract and blessed with healing tears, ELENA replies, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her chest. By the old laws, I have the right to defend my claim. Seraphina's eyes narrow dangerously. You know something of ancient customs, little girl. Very well. I accept your challenge, though it will be your doom. The shadow crown flares with dark triumph as Seraphina prepares to craft a trial that no mortal could possibly survive. But ELENA has noticed something the vampire queen has not. Where her healing tears fell, small flowers still bloom despite Seraphina's withering presence. The crown's power is vast, but it is not absolute. Choose your trial, ELENA says, hoping her voice doesn't betray the fear threatening to overwhelm her. 3 tests, Seraphina declares, her crown pulsing with malevolent glee. First, a test of courage. You must walk through flames that burn with the essence of despair itself. Second, a test of wisdom. You must solve a riddle that has claimed the minds of philosophers for centuries. And third, a test of love. You must prove that your feelings for Draven are strong enough to overcome the crown's power to corrupt all emotion into hatred. ELENA feels Draven's hand touch her shoulder, his fingers trembling with the need to protect her. ELENA, don't do this. The trials will kill you. Maybe, ELENA agrees, covering his hand with hers. But if I don't try, Seraphina will kill everyone I care about anyway. At least this way there's a chance. She turns to face the vampire queen, whose beauty seems to grow more terrible with each passing moment. The shadow crown writhes with anticipation, hungry for the opportunity to destroy this mortal who dares challenge its bearer. I accept your trials, ELENA says, her voice ringing clearly across the frost-covered courtyard. Seraphina smiles, revealing fangs like crystal daggers. Then let us begin, little fool. Let us see how long your courage lasts when faced with true darkness. As the vampire queen raises her hands to conjure the first trial, ELENA catches sight of James among the hunters, his young face filled with terror and helpless love. Whatever happens next, she knows she fights not just for her own happiness, but for the safety of everyone who stands in this cursed courtyard. The shadow crown blazes with dark fire, and ELENA prepares to face trials designed to break her mind, body, and spirit in service of an ancient evil's jealous rage. Seraphina's laughter echoes off the castle walls as she conjures the first trial. With a gesture from her shadow crown, flames erupt from the courtyard stones, but these are not ordinary fires. They burn with colors that have no names, casting shadows that move independently of their sources. The flames whisper of every failure, every disappointment, every moment of despair ELENA has ever experienced. "Behold the fires of despair," Seraphina announces, her voice dripping with malicious satisfaction. "They burn not flesh, but hope itself. Walk through them, little mortal, and emerge with your courage intact. Fail, and your soul will know only darkness for all eternity." ELENA approaches the wall of supernatural fire, feeling its terrible heat against her skin. But worse than the physical sensation are the whispers that grow louder with each step, voices from her past, reminding her of every time she was rejected, abandoned, found wanting. "Worthless girl," the flames hiss in her mother's voice. "Even your own family couldn't love you enough to keep searching. Monster's bride," they continue, now speaking with the cruel tones of village children. "Creature's whore. You think you found love, but it's only hunger wearing a prettier mask." ELENA falters, the despair seeping into her bones like poison. The flames seem to grow higher, more intense, feeding on her moment of doubt. Behind her she hears James calling her name, begging her to stop this madness. Then, from somewhere deeper than the fire's reach, ELENA remembers the crystalline chime she heard when she first touched the thornless rose, the sound of pure truth cutting through deception. She closes her eyes and reaches for that memory, that moment of absolute certainty when she knew what love could be. "You're wrong," she says to the flames, her voice steady despite their roaring. "I was never worthless. I was just lost, and he helped me find my way home." ELENA steps into the fires, and they part before her like water. Where the flames touch her skin, instead of burning, they transform, becoming gentle warmth, becoming light that illuminates rather than destroys. She walks through the wall of fire as if it were nothing more than morning mist, emerging unscathed on the other side. Seraphina's perfect features twist with anger. "Impossible! No mortal has ever—" "Perhaps," Magnus interrupts gently, "mortals are stronger than you remember." "My lady," the vampire queen's rage causes frost to spread further across the courtyard. But ELENA notices something else. A small crack has appeared in the shadow crown, barely visible but definitely there. The artifact's power is vast but not unlimited. "No matter," Seraphina snarls. "The second trial will not be so easily overcome." The air before ELENA shimmers, and suddenly she finds herself standing before an ornate pedestal. Upon it rests a crystal orb that pulses with inner light, the heart of flame, she realizes, recognizing it from descriptions in the castle's ancient texts. This crystal is said to burn away all lies, revealing truth in its purest form. The heart of flame compels absolute honesty, Seraphina explains, her composure returning as she regains confidence in her trap. "Place your hands upon it and answer my riddle truthfully, or be consumed by the very lies you tell yourself." ELENA approaches the crystal, feeling its heat intensify with each step. When she places her palms against its surface, fire races through her veins, not painful, but overwhelming in its demand for truth. "Here is your riddle, little bride," Seraphina purrs. "What is the difference between love and obsession? Between salvation and destruction? Between choosing freely and being cleverly manipulated? Answer incorrectly, and the crystal will show everyone present the truth of what you really feel, including the selfish desires you hide even from yourself." ELENA feels the heart of Flame's power coursing through her, demanding nothing less than complete honesty. Around the courtyard she sees worried faces, Draven's fear, James's desperation, Captain Mordecai's grim certainty that she is about to reveal herself as a creature's thrall. "Love," ELENA begins, her voice carrying clearly in the supernatural silence, "is wanting someone's happiness, even when it means your own sadness. Obsession is wanting someone's presence regardless of their pain. The crystal's light grows brighter, but it does not burn her." Encouraged, ELENA continues, "Salvation is becoming the person you were meant to be. Destruction is losing yourself in service to someone else's needs. And choosing freely, she pauses, looking directly at Draven. Choosing freely means being offered the option to leave, really and truly leave. And deciding to stay anyway. The heart of flame blazes with brilliant light. But instead of consuming ELENA, it bathes her in radiance that makes her seem to glow from within. The crystal shows no deception, no hidden darkness, only the pure truth of a woman who has chosen love with full knowledge of its costs. "I love Draven," ELENA says, her voice ringing with crystal clarity. "Not because he's perfect, not because he saved me, but because he saw worth in me when I couldn't see it in myself. And because I see the man he's becoming, not just the monster he was cursed to be." Seraphina staggers backward as if struck, the shadow crown flickering with uncertainty. Another crack appears in the ancient artifact, wider than the first. 2 trials passed, ELENA says, stepping away from the heart of flame with new confidence. "What is the third?" Seraphina's rage makes the very air crackle with dark energy as she prepares the final trial. The shadow crown writhes upon her head, its cracks spreading like spiderwebs across its obsidian surface. With each crack, ELENA notices the vampire queen's perfect composure slipping, revealing something desperate beneath her ancient beauty. "For your third trial," Seraphina hisses, her voice no longer melodious but sharp as breaking glass. "You will face the truth stone." From the courtyard center, a pillar of black marble rises, its surface carved with symbols that seem to shift and change when viewed directly. Atop the pillar rests a sphere of crystal so clear it appears to be made of captured starlight. But ELENA can feel the malevolent purpose radiating from it. This stone doesn't just reveal truth, it compels it, forcing whoever touches it to confess their deepest secrets without filter or mercy. "Place your hand upon the truth stone," Seraphina commands, "and I will ask you questions that will strip away every pretense, every comfortable lie you tell yourself. The stone will reveal what you truly are, a simple mortal girl playing at emotions she doesn't understand, drawn to darkness by nothing more than loneliness and misplaced gratitude." ELENA approaches the pillar, aware that this trial is different from the others. The truth stone doesn't just test courage or honesty, it violates the sacred privacy of the human heart, forcing revelation of thoughts and feelings that were never meant for public consumption. "ELENA, don't," Draven calls out, his voice breaking with desperation. "The stone will make you say things you'll regret, reveal vulnerabilities that can be used against you. Please, I can't bear to watch them torture you this way." But ELENA has already placed her palm against the truth stone's surface, gasping as its power floods through her like ice water in her veins. Every thought becomes available to Seraphina's probing questions, every emotion laid bare and defenseless. "Tell us, little bride," Seraphina purrs, sensing victory within reach. "What did you feel when you first saw Lord Draven? What was your first honest thought?" ELENA tries to resist, but the stone's compulsion is absolute. "I thought he was beautiful," she says, the words torn from her throat against her will. "Beautiful and terrible and so lonely it made my heart ache. And when he offered you shelter, what did you truly think of his bargain? That it was too good to be true. That someone would finally want me, even if it was only a monster desperate enough to accept anything." ELENA's cheeks burn with shame at the admission, but the truth stone allows no mercy, no softening of harsh realities. Seraphina's laughter fills the courtyard. "You see? Even she admits it. She came here out of desperation, not love. Her affection is built on gratitude and loneliness, nothing more. But the vampire queen's triumph is premature." ELENA feels the stone's power flowing through her, and instead of fighting its demands for truth, she embraces them completely. "Yes," ELENA says, her voice growing stronger despite the stone's violation of her privacy. "I was desperate. I was lonely. I was grateful for any kindness after months of rejection. But that was the beginning, not the end." She looks directly at Draven, letting him see the absolute truth burning in her eyes. "I stayed because of gratitude at first. But I fell in love because I saw who you really are beneath the curse. I saw your gentleness with the shadow servants, your grief for the women who died trying to save you, your willingness to starve rather than hurt an innocent. I saw your capacity for growth, for change, for becoming something better than what you were. The truth stone blazes with light, but it confirms every word ELENA speaks as absolute fact. And when I touched the thornless rose, ELENA continues, when I saw the garden bloom because I dared to love it, I understood something the other women missed. They tried to save you from your curse. I fell in love with the man you're becoming despite it. Seraphina staggers backward, the shadow crown now spiderwebbed with cracks that glow with inner light. Impossible! Mortals cannot— What's impossible, ELENA interrupts, still channeling the truth stone's power, is believing that love requires perfection. I don't love Draven because he's not a monster. I love him because he chooses every day not to be one, despite the curse that makes it so easy to give in to darkness. The truth stone's light begins to shift, its crystal surface reflecting not ELENA's vulnerabilities, but her strengths, her capacity for seeing potential rather than just reality, for choosing hope over fear, for loving not what someone is, but what they could become. One more question, Seraphina says, desperation creeping into her voice. If loving him costs you your mortality, your humanity, your very soul, would you still choose him? ELENA doesn't hesitate. I would choose him if it cost me everything. But the real truth, the one you can't accept, is that loving him has given me everything I never knew I needed. A home, a purpose, the chance to be valued for who I am rather than saved from what I'm not. The truth stone explodes with brilliant light, its crystal surface shattering into 1,000 fragments that sparkle like stars as they fall. And with its destruction, the final crack spreads across the shadow crown, causing the ancient artifact to crumble from Seraphina's head like ash. Without the crown's power, the vampire queen reveals herself as she truly is, not a beautiful predator, but a creature consumed by centuries of jealousy and bitterness, her perfect features twisted by malice that has eaten away at her from within. No, Seraphina whispers, staring at the ruins of her crown. This cannot be. Mortals cannot break what I have built. The destruction of the shadow crown sends Seraphina into a rage that shakes the very foundations of the castle. Without the ancient artifact's power, her true nature stands revealed, not the bee. Beautiful queen she appeared to be, but a creature hollowed out by centuries of bitterness and jealous fury. Her perfect features shift and blur, showing glimpses of the monster beneath. You think you've won. Seraphina snarls, her voice no longer melodious but rasping like metal on stone. You think breaking my crown means anything? I have other powers, older magics than that trinket. She raises her hands, and ELENA sees something that makes her blood run cold. Thin, nearly invisible threads extending from Seraphina's fingertips to Magnus, who has been standing quietly among the witnesses. The elderly servant's expression shifts from concern to blank obedience, his movements becoming unnaturally precise as he steps forward. Magnus, Draven breathes, understanding flooding his features. How long? Since the beginning, my lord, Magnus replies, but his voice carries no warmth, no personality, only hollow compliance. Lady Seraphina's puppet strings have guided my actions for 3 centuries. Every bride who came to the castle, every failure to break the curse, every moment of hope followed by despair, all orchestrated by my hand at her command. ELENA stares in horror at the invisible bonds connecting Seraphina to the faithful servant she has come to trust. The puppet strings shimmer faintly in the moonlight, and she realizes they extend not just to Magnus, but to other shadows moving at the edges of the courtyard. Shadow servants who have served the castle faithfully, now revealed as unwilling agents of the vampire queen's will. You see, little bride, Seraphina laughs, her fingers dancing as she manipulates the strings with practiced ease. I arranged for every woman who came before you. I guided them here, shaped their hopes, ensured their failures. Each disappointment weakened Draven's faith in redemption, made him more susceptible to despair. Magnus moves with jerky, unnatural steps toward ELENA, his kind eyes now empty of warmth. I told each woman exactly what she needed to hear to fail. I planted doubts, encouraged hasty actions, whispered suggestions that led them away from the truth they needed to discover. Even my arrival, ELENA realizes with growing horror. You arranged that too. Of course, the storm that drove you here, the village's rejection, even your family's failure to find you, all threads in a web I have woven for decades. Serafina's smile reveals fangs like broken glass. You were meant to be the final disappointment, the last failure that would drive Draven to despair so complete he would accept me as his eternal companion. ELENA sees the devastating perfection of Serafina's plan. Not content merely to claim Draven by force, she wanted him to choose her, to surrender his hope of redemption willingly. Every previous bride was a step in this larger manipulation, each failure designed to break his spirit incrementally. But you made an error, ELENA says, backing away from Magnus's approaching figure. You assumed I would react like the others, that I would try to save him instead of simply loving him. A minor miscalculation, Serafina admits, her fingers pulling Magnus's strings with increasing violence, but easily corrected. Magnus, kill the girl. Make it look like an accident. Perhaps she fell from the tower in her distress over learning the truth. Magnus draws a knife from his robes, the blade glinting with supernatural sharpness. But as he raises it toward ELENA, something unexpected happens. The puppet strings connecting him to Serafina begin to fray, their hold weakening as they encounter something they cannot control. Impossible, Serafina hisses, pulling harder on the strings. My control is absolute. Not anymore, Magnus says, and for the first time in centuries, his voice carries genuine emotion, pain, regret, and something that might be hope. The girl's love has changed the very nature of this place. Your strings worked because the castle was bound by despair, but love is dissolving those bonds. ELENA watches in amazement as the puppet strings connecting Magnus to Serafina begin to snap one by one, each broken thread releasing him further from her control. The shadow servants throughout the courtyard experience the same liberation, their movements becoming more natural, more alive. You cannot break what I have built. Serafina shrieks, pouring more power into her remaining strings, trying to maintain control through sheer force. But ELENA understands what is happening. Love doesn't just heal individuals. It transforms environments, changes the fundamental nature of spaces where it takes root. Raven's Hollow Castle, bound for centuries by curse and despair, is becoming something new under the influence of genuine affection, freely given and gratefully received. Magnus, ELENA says gently, extending her hand toward the elderly servant who has served this place far longer than anyone realizes. You don't have to be her puppet anymore. Magnus looks at ELENA's outstretched hand, then at the knife still clutched in his trembling fingers. For a moment he wavers between 3 centuries of compelled obedience and the possibility of choice, returning to his actions. I remember, he whispers, wonder filling his voice. I remember who I was before the strings. I remember choosing to serve this house out of loyalty, not compulsion. The last puppet string snaps with an audible crack, and Magnus drops the knife to kneel before ELENA, with tears streaming down his weathered face. Forgive me, my lady. I have been the architect of so much sorrow. ELENA helps the old servant to his feet, her healing tears once again beginning to bloom into luminous flowers wherever they fall. You were a prisoner, Magnus. Prisoners don't need forgiveness for their captivity. Serafina stands alone now, stripped of her crown, her puppet strings broken, her centuries-long manipulation finally exposed. But ELENA can see the vampire queen preparing for one final desperate gambit, gathering what remains of her power for a direct assault that will either destroy them all or consume her in the attempt. With her puppet strings broken and her schemes exposed, Seraphina retreats to the castle's highest tower, her desperate fury manifesting as unnatural storms that lash the ancient stones. ELENA follows, knowing that this confrontation must end here now, before the Vampire Queen's madness destroys everything she has come to love. At the tower's peak, Seraphina stands before an altar of black stone that pulses with malevolent energy. The structure is older than the castle itself, carved with symbols that seem to writhe and shift in the moonlight. ELENA recognizes it from descriptions in the castle's oldest texts, the sacrifice altar, a relic from ages when dark gods demanded blood for power. "You think love conquers all, little mortal?" Seraphina laughs, her hands pressed against the altar's surface. "Then watch as I prove that death conquers love." The Vampire Queen draws a blade across her own wrist, letting ancient blood flow onto the altar's hungry stone. Where her blood touches, the symbols flare to life with crimson fire, and ELENA feels the very air grow thick with dark magic. "I offer my immortal essence," Seraphina chants, "my 1,000 years of accumulated power to fuel one final curse. Let this castle and all within it be consumed by the hatred I have nursed for centuries. Let love turn to ash, hope to despair, light to eternal darkness." The altar drinks in Seraphina's sacrifice greedily, its black stone beginning to crack and bleed. ELENA realizes with growing horror that the Vampire Queen intends to destroy herself along with everyone else, transforming the castle into a monument to her jealous rage. "Stop!" ELENA calls out, approaching despite the waves of malevolent energy radiating from the altar. "This isn't what you want, Seraphina. You're destroying yourself for nothing. For nothing." Seraphina's laughter turns hysterical. "I am ensuring that if I cannot have Draven's love, no one can. The altar will feed on my sacrifice until nothing remains but shadow and regret." But ELENA has noticed something crucial. The altar demands sacrifice, but it doesn't specify what kind. The ancient magic is hungry, yes, but it responds to the intention behind the offering as much as the power within it. "You're right," ELENA says, stepping closer to the altar despite Draven's shouts from below, his voice carried on the wind as he climbs the tower stairs. "Love does require sacrifice, but not the kind you think." Before Seraphina can react, ELENA places her own hands on the altar's blood-slicked surface. The stone burns like ice against her palms, and she feels its hunger trying to drain her life force to add her mortal essence to the Vampire Queen's dark offering. "What are you doing?" Seraphina snarls, trying to push ELENA away from the altar. "Making a different sacrifice," ELENA says, her voice steady despite the altar's attempts to consume her. "I offer my mortality willingly, not to fuel hatred, but to prove that love is stronger than the darkness you've nursed for so long." The altar writhes with confusion, its ancient magic struggling to process an offering made from love rather than hate, from hope rather than despair. ELENA feels her life force flowing into the stone, but instead of strengthening Seraphina's curse, her sacrifice begins transforming it. "Impossible," Seraphina gasps, watching as the crimson symbols on the altar begin shifting from blood red to silver, their meaning changing as ELENA's pure intention overwrites centuries of dark purpose. "Love requires sacrifice," ELENA repeats, her voice growing fainter as the altar draws more of her essence. But not the sacrifice of others, the sacrifice of self. Not destruction, but transformation. Not taking, but giving. Draven bursts onto the tower, his face twisted with anguish as he sees ELENA weakening beside the altar. "ELENA, no! Step away from that cursed thing." "I can't," ELENA whispers, her knees beginning to buckle. "The altar has already begun the process. But Draven, listen to me. This is how we break your curse. Not through someone dying for you, but through someone choosing to transform with you." The altar's hunger grows stronger, pulling more life from ELENA with each passing moment. But instead of adding her power to Seraphina's curse of destruction, her willing sacrifice begins rewriting the fundamental nature of the magic itself. The altar was built for dark sacrifices, ELENA explains, her voice barely audible now. But sacrifice itself isn't evil, it's the intention that matters. I'm not dying for you, Draven. I'm choosing to become something new with you. Seraphina staggers backward as the altar's transformation accelerates, its black stone beginning to crack and reveal veins of pure silver beneath. The vampire queen's curse, meant to spread hatred and despair, finds itself being transformed into something entirely different, a blessing of unity, of shared transformation, of love that creates rather than destroys. "Join me," ELENA gasps, extending her hand toward Draven. "Place your hand on the altar with mine. Let us face whatever comes next together." Draven hesitates for only a moment, seeing the cost ELENA is paying for this chance at redemption. Then he steps forward and places his hand beside hers on the altar's surface, adding his immortal essence to her mortal sacrifice. The moment their combined offering touches the stone, the altar explodes with light so brilliant it can be seen for miles across the moors. When the radiance fades, the sacrifice altar has become something entirely new, a monument to unity, its silver surface carved with symbols of hope, love, and shared destiny rather than dark hunger. ELENA collapses, her sacrifice having drained her to the edge of death. But Draven catches her, and she sees that his eyes no longer burn with crimson fire. They have become human blue, warm with mortality and love freely chosen. ELENA hovers between life and death, her sacrifice to the altar having drained her to the very edge of existence. Draven cradles her against his chest, his newly mortal heart beating with desperate rhythm as he watches the color drain from her face. The transformed altar has claimed its price, but ELENA's life hangs by the thinnest of threads. "There must be something," Draven whispers, his voice breaking with desperation. "Some way to restore what the altar took." Through the tower's windows, the first light of dawn begins to creep across the moors, and with it comes an unexpected sight, a blood moon, hanging impossibly in the brightening sky. The celestial phenomenon should not be possible, yet there it hangs, casting everything in ethereal crimson light. Magnus appears at the tower's entrance, no longer moving with the jerky motions of a puppet, but with the fluid grace of a man finally free to choose his actions. In his hands, he carries a chalice unlike any ELENA has seen, not silver like the goblet that satisfied Draven's hunger, but crystal that seems to capture and hold the blood moon's light. "The lunar chalice," Magnus explains, approaching with reverent steps. "It appears only during the rarest of celestial events, when sacrifice and love combine to create new possibilities. I found it in the castle's depths calling to me." Draven looks up with desperate hope. "Can it save her?" "Not save," Magnus corrects gently. "Transform. The chalice offers a different kind of existence, neither fully mortal nor immortal, but something new. She would retain her humanity while gaining the strength to withstand the changes your shared sacrifice has begun." ELENA's eyes flutter open at the sound of their voices, though her gaze remains unfocused. "Draven," she whispers, her voice barely audible. "I'm here," he says, brushing her hair back from her pallid face. "Magnus has brought something that might help, but ELENA, you have to choose. The transformation isn't reversible. What would I become?" ELENA asks, though speaking seems to cost her enormous effort. Magnus kneels beside them, the lunar chalice glowing more brightly in his hands. "Something between mortal and immortal. You would age but slowly, over centuries rather than decades. You would retain your human heart, your capacity for growth and change, but gain the strength to stand as Draven's equal in all things." ELENA looks at Draven, seeing the man he has become, no longer the cursed creature driven by supernatural hunger, but a being who has chosen love over power, sacrifice over selfishness. His transformation is already complete, his immortality tempered by the humanity he has regained through their shared ordeal. "And you?" ELENA asks him. "What has the altar's transformation done to you?" "I am what I chose to become," Draven replies, wonder in his voice. Neither fully mortal nor immortal, but something new. The curse is broken, ELENA. I feel the passage of time again, the weight of choices, the possibility of growth. I'm free to become whatever I choose to be, rather than trapped by what I was made to be. Through the windows, they can see the effects of their sacrifice spreading across the castle grounds. The gardens bloom with impossible beauty. The stones themselves seem to glow with inner light, and in the courtyard below, Captain Mordecai and his men watch in amazement as Seraphina's malevolent magic continues to unravel. Replaced by something warm and welcoming. Drink, Magnus urges, offering ELENA the lunar chalice. But understand, this choice binds you to Draven, not through magical compulsion, but through shared nature. You would become true partners, equals in power and purpose. ELENA looks into the chalice's crystal depths and sees swirling light that seems to contain the essence of the blood moon itself. The liquid within glows with silver fire, beautiful and terrible in its potential. If I drink this, we can build something together, not just survive, but create. The castle is already changing, Draven says, gesturing toward the windows, where dawn light mingles impossibly with the blood moon's glow. Your sacrifice has transformed its very nature. It's becoming a sanctuary, a place where love can flourish rather than be consumed. ELENA thinks of the garden they tended together, the way the thornless rose bloomed at her touch, the healing tears that grew into flowers of light. She thinks of Magnus, finally free to choose his own actions, and of all the shadow servants who are even now discovering what it means to serve out of loyalty rather than compulsion. Will you drink with me? ELENA asks, though she knows the answer before Draven nods. Together, he confirms, helping her sit up despite her weakness. Magnus divides the chalice's contents between two smaller cups, the liquid maintaining its ethereal glow as it separates. ELENA and Draven drink simultaneously, the moon's essence flowing through them like liquid starlight. The transformation is immediate and overwhelming. ELENA feels strength returning to her limbs, but more than that, she feels a fundamental change in her very nature. She is still herself, still human in all the ways that matter, but now she possesses the power to stand as Draven's equal, to help him reshape not just their own destinies, but the world around them. When the change completes, ELENA rises to her feet with fluid grace, her eyes now holding flecks of silver that reflect the impossible light outside. Draven stands beside her, and she sees that his transformation has continued as well. He remains recognizably himself. But something deeper has shifted, some fundamental balance between darkness and light. What do we do now? ELENA asks, looking out at the world that awaits them. We begin, Draven says simply, taking her hand as the blood moon finally fades into the brightening dawn. The dawn that follows the blood moon reveals a world transformed. Seraphina lies unconscious at the base of the altar, her immortal essence spent, her centuries of accumulated power drained into the failed curse that became a blessing instead. She breathes still, but weakly, reduced to something far more fragile than the terrible queen who had threatened to destroy them all. ELENA and Draven descend from the tower hand in hand, their shared transformation evident in the way they move, with perfect synchronization, as if they have become two parts of a single whole. In the courtyard, Captain Mordecai and his hunters wait with weapons lowered, their certainty shaken by the night's revelations. The vampire queen, Mordecai says, gesturing toward Seraphina's prone form. What has become of her? She chose destruction over growth, ELENA replies, her voice carrying new authority. The altar took her power and transformed it into something she never intended, a force for healing rather than harm. James approaches his sister cautiously, his young face filled with wonder and confusion. ELENA, you look... He struggles for words. Different. Are you still human? I'm still your sister, ELENA says gently, embracing James with careful control of her new strength. But I'm also something more now, something I chose to become. Magnus appears at Elena's side, carrying an object that makes everyone in the courtyard step back in amazement. It appears to be a pendant of impossible beauty, two separate halves that float independently near each other, one side gleaming with silver light, the other pulsing with gentle darkness. Where the halves nearly touch, sparks of energy dance between them like captured lightning. The Unity Pendant, Magnus explains, his voice filled with awe. Legend spoke of it, but I never believed it truly existed. It's said to appear only when two souls achieve perfect balance, neither light consuming dark, nor darkness overwhelming. Light, but both existing in harmony. Elena reaches toward the pendant, and immediately one half drifts to her hand while the other settles into Draven's palm. The moment they both hold their respective pieces, the energy between them intensifies, creating a bridge of pure light that connects not just the pendant halves, but their hearts as well. What does it do? James asks, still struggling to understand the supernatural forces he's witnessing. It multiplies power when the bearers act in perfect unity, Magnus explains. But more than that, it ensures they can never be truly separated. Distance, time, even death itself cannot break the bond it creates. Captain Mordecai studies the pendant with the eye of someone who has spent decades hunting supernatural creatures. I've seen many dark artifacts in my time, but this, he pauses, his expression troubled. This radiates no evil. It feels almost holy. Because it was born from sacrifice freely given rather than power taken by force, Elena says, understanding flooding through her as the pendant's nature becomes clear. Every other magical artifact we've encountered was created through compulsion, through bending reality to serve selfish ends. This exists because two people chose to become something greater together. Draven flexes his fingers around his half of the pendant, marveling at the way it seems to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. I can feel your thoughts, he tells Elena wonderingly, not invasively, but like an echo of my own consciousness. We remain ourselves, but we're also connected in ways I never imagined possible. The pendant's power becomes evident as they work together to address the aftermath of the night's events. When Elena tends to the hunter's wounds with her healing tears, Draven's presence amplifies their effectiveness. When he uses his supernatural strength to repair damage to the castle walls, Elena's touch guides his efforts with perfect precision. Most remarkably, when they approach Seraphina's unconscious form, the pendant's dual nature allows them to see not just what she is, but what she could become. Beneath centuries of bitterness and jealousy lies the woman she once was. Powerful, yes, but also capable of love before that capacity was corrupted by obsession. She doesn't have to remain our enemy, Elena says, kneeling beside the fallen vampire queen. The pendant shows me possibilities, paths she could take if someone offers her a different choice than destruction. You would show mercy to one who tried to destroy us all? Captain Mordecai asks, his hand moving instinctively toward his sword. I would offer redemption to someone who forgot what love truly means, Elena corrects. The same chance that was offered to Draven, the same transformation that saved us both, Draven nods, understanding the wisdom in Elena's words. Punishment creates more darkness. Only forgiveness can break the cycle. Together, they channel the pendant's power toward Seraphina, not to control or compel her, but to offer a glimpse of what she could become if she chose growth over vengeance. The vampire queen's breathing deepens, her features softening as centuries of accumulated hatred begin to drain away. Will she accept it? James asks, watching this display of supernatural mercy with growing comprehension. That will be her choice to make, Elena says, standing as Seraphina's eyes flutter open. We can offer the possibility of redemption, but we cannot force someone to accept it. The Unity pendant pulses with warm light as Seraphina looks up at them, confusion and something that might be hope flickering in her ancient eyes. For the first time in centuries, she has been offered love instead of conquest, mercy instead of judgment. Why? Seraphina whispers, her voice no longer carrying the imperious authority of a queen, but the vulnerability of someone who has forgotten what kindness feels like. Because, ELENA says simply, extending her hand to help the fallen vampire rise, everyone deserves the chance to choose love over hatred. Hope over despair, the pendant's light grows brighter as Seraphina hesitantly takes ELENA's offered hand. And for the first time in the long night, true peace seems possible. 1 year later, Raven's Hollow Castle has become something no one could have imagined. A sanctuary where the supernatural and mortal worlds exist in harmony. The gardens, ELENA and Draven tend together bloom with impossible beauty, their thornless roses now growing in every color imaginable, each bush tended by visitors who come seeking healing, wisdom, or simply the peace that radiates from this transformed place. Today marks their true wedding ceremony, witnessed not only by family and friends, but by beings from across the supernatural realm who have heard of the castle where love conquered ancient curses. Magnus moves among the guests with quiet joy, his centuries of servitude replaced by freely chosen devotion to the couple who freed him from Seraphina's control. In the garden's heart, where the original thornless rose still blooms eternal, an arch of living flowers frames the altar where ELENA and Draven will speak their vows. James stands proudly as witness, his understanding of love expanded by watching his sister build something extraordinary with her transformed husband. Captain Mordecai, now more friend than hunter, has traded his blessed silver blade for the simpler role of honored guest. Even Seraphina is present, though much changed from the vampire queen who once threatened to destroy them all. The redemption ELENA offered has taken root slowly but surely, transforming centuries of bitterness into something approaching wisdom. She moves quietly among the guests, no longer commanding attention through fear, but earning respect through her careful efforts to atone for past cruelties. As the ceremony begins, Magnus approaches the altar carrying a crown, unlike any that has graced royal heads before. This is no symbol of dominion or power over others, but something far more precious. The wedding crown, forged from silver blessed by love itself, its surface engraved with symbols of unity, growth, and eternal partnership. This crown appears only when two souls become truly one, Magnus explains, his voice carrying across the assembled gathering. It does not grant power over others, but power with each other. It binds not through compulsion, but through choice made eternal. ELENA looks radiant in her gown of starlight silver, the fabric seeming to shift and flow like captured moonbeams. Draven stands beside her in elegant black, adorned with silver threads, their unity pendant glowing softly at their throats as matching halves of a perfect whole. "You came to me in a storm," Draven says, his voice carrying clearly in the garden's perfect acoustics, "a starving girl seeking only shelter. Instead, you gave me everything I had forgotten how to hope for: acceptance, understanding, and love that saw not what I was, but what I could become. You offered me a bargain," ELENA replies, tears of joy creating tiny flowers at her feet, shelter in exchange for companionship. "What you actually gave me was a home, a purpose, and the chance to discover that love isn't about saving someone else. It's about growing together into something neither could be alone." Magnus lifts the wedding crown, its silver surface reflecting not just light, but the very essence of their bond. "Do you, ELENA, choose to share not just this life, but all lives to come, bound not by magical compulsion, but by love freely given and gratefully received?" "I do," ELENA says, her voice ringing with absolute certainty. "Do you, Draven, choose to stand as equal partner, to grow and change together through whatever challenges eternity may bring?" "I do," Draven replies, his transformation from monster to man complete in this moment of pure commitment. The wedding crown splits into two circlets as Magnus places it upon their heads, each half glowing with the same warm light as their unity pendant. The moment the crowns settle into place, The entire garden transforms. Every flower blooms simultaneously. The air fills with music that seems to arise from the earth itself, and a gentle rain of silver light falls from a cloudless sky. By the power of love freely chosen, Magnus declares, tears streaming down his weathered face, I pronounce you bound in eternal partnership, rulers not of subjects but of your own shared destiny. As ELENA and DRAVEN kiss beneath the arch of flowers, their crowns blazing with silver fire, the castle behind them transforms one final time. The ancient stones glow with welcoming light, the windows shine like stars, and the very air hums with magic that heals rather than harms. The gathering erupts in celebration, mortals and supernatural beings united in joy for a couple who have proven that love truly can conquer darkness when it chooses understanding over judgment, growth over stagnation, and hope over fear. That evening, as the celebration continues in the great hall, where shadow servants dance with human guests and former enemies share wine in friendship, ELENA and DRAVEN stand together on their balcony, overlooking the transformed gardens. What do you see when you look to the future? ELENA asks, her head resting on DRAVEN's shoulder. Endless possibility, DRAVEN replies, his arm tightening around her. 1,000 gardens to plant, 1,000 souls to help heal, 1,000 ways to prove that love creates rather than consumes, and forever to do it in. ELENA adds, smiling as she touches the wedding crown that will never leave her brow, that will remind her always of the moment she chose to become something greater through unity rather than sacrifice. Below them, the gardens bloom eternal under starlight, tended by love and watched over by two souls who learned that the greatest magic of all is the choice. To grow together rather than alone. In the distance, other castles begin to glow with similar light as the example of Raven's Hollow spreads across the world, proof that even the darkest curses can be broken by those brave enough to choose love over fear, hope over despair, and unity over isolation. The fairy tale ends not with happily ever after, but with happily ever growing, for that is what true love does. It never stops becoming more than it was.